Hello. Hey. Hi, everybody. My fellow American citizens and foreigners alike. Oh, pardon me. Excuse that one person. My social media family, and for that matter, visitors alike. Being a whatsoever racist, but then not necessarily being a whatever walks of life, lifestyles of society, or lifestyle preferences. There is a reason and a purpose for that. My person having mentioned that last as I had done or did or whatever I've said. Yeah, speaking correct, proper standard English grammar, the American dialect of some of such qualities and quantities or not, or be I speaking the King's English or street slang for that matter. Being because the very reason why I had mentioned that last as I had done or did is being that because as anyone knows or anybody, being of whom not at least but on average still possess half their marbles know in accordance to the saying of people's places and things. I mean, being at the wrong place at the wrong crowd. Oh, excuse me. That is correction. Being at the wrong place at the wrong time in the wrong crowd within some of such can or could possibly have some or such rather severe or serious consequences. And I myself, being that I'm a person, have been there, done that, and don't want to do it again anytime too soon enough again. Well, hopefully it would be a long time in coming, if and when, or better yet to be said, if at all. And so I say and I state for the record to that of your person among yourselves, being of any social media family members or visitors to that being of my own personal chat room for these social media broadcasts of my own and for this particular social media website address, being of which that my person am an account holder of, or for that of my channel, being of which is affiliated, associated with, and I'm representing, that being of the same, of the said in question, and or the previous or prior mention. Yes, so I say to you all, being a one and all of your persons among yourselves, being of whom, though some, if not all, may be of my social media family, but then not necessarily being of whatsoever, whatever walks of life, factions of society, or lifestyle preferences. And yet, can or could possibly be uh, those being of visitors who could possibly become, if you all or your persons are not already, that being or those to be considered among yourselves members to my social media family, being of whom are whatsoever races, but then not necessarily being whatever walks of life, factions of society, or lifestyle preferences. And as you all, any visitors, could possibly be of whatsoever races and or whatever walks of life, factions of society, or lifestyle preferences to be considered in general. But then likewise both being of my social media family and visitors being of the old and young alike, both two sexual genders, males and females representing not only the human species, but then nevertheless the global community within this post 911 era of a new millennium of this apocalyptic day and age. Some such, and whereas the doomsday clock is now, the doomsday clock of the remaining superpowers compared to other countries or nations, being of which are not to be considered as being anymore, with their military arsenals, whereas it being the doomsday clock is compared on to how formerly periods were prior to then was at a quarter midnight. It's now presently at a couple few minutes to midnight for these rather biblically prophetic times. Hold that thought. Sorry about that, you all. I had my alarm set for 7 p.m. and I am going to turn it off. And if you would bear with me, I myself, being that my person are one and the same, and I'm going to change the channel for another medium, for that some such a given moment in time, if you please. Yes, just bear with me. As I have said before, so I say again, sorry about that. Social media family, and or any visitors to that being of my own channel for a social media broadcast for that some of such a given moment in time, or as any of you all being a persons among yourselves have paid a visit to my own personal chat room. I owe you all an apology, being which is necessary for that my person to extend it to whosoever at whatever given moment in time or whenever, if it is appropriate for that my person to express that of a line of thought, and in that same sense of word, or as I myself, being that of my person, have thought of it with that of my mind's intentions, to think to do so now. As what interruption that had developed and become the result of some such other, begging your pardon, I apologize. Once again, I say, as it was of unforeseen circumstances and the necessary preparations, unfortunately, I did not take the liberty to go about that, taking care of the necessary business at hand, so that some of such a mishap as that being of a disruption or interruption would not so readily occur as it had done. Yes, sorry about that again, you all, my social media family, and we will resume this here particular present broadcast, whereas not only could you possibly hear that of the audio of my voice, but then nevertheless, whereas every and all persons involved, be any members of my social media family or visitors, would likewise have visual of that being of my person. And as I return here and now, sorry about that, as I was saying. Hold that thought, if you please. I didn't drink much water, if any, very little today. I don't think I had drink.
I think that's really fun and exciting. Now, Peter, as you have pointed out, and I share this view, that it's really
mixed with some. Okay, we're back.
As the growing circle of Bidens that may at some point include Joe. So when does this become a conflict?
Other than that, whatsoever. That sorry. Again, in due regard to some or such other, in reference to whatever I've said. First of all, let me ask you all the question. How are you all doing? Well, hopefully everyone is doing at least okay, if not better yet to be said. All right, or if not best of all to be said, to be feeling blessed and stressed, more blessed and stressed, or too blessed to possibly become or be stressed. You and yours, and family and friends, and hopefully me and mine. Likewise as well, all the same. But then, whatsoever I could speak upon, be it of this or that or whatever, being in which could possibly come to mind, or whatever I've said, be it a one subject matter to be possibly considered, or a couple of few topics of discussions to be debated, of giving arguments with the many different views and opinions affiliated, associated with, and are representing thereof, and be it a controversy or not, or be it this or that of an issue that has yet to be resolved, if not already, and be it of a plague upon any given society for a country or nation or not. But then, don't kill the messenger. I'm just here to deliver, and hopefully with that much less the temptation and an opportunity to play the part of the devil's advocate, as the lesser two evils being a prodigal son, and whereas the worst two evils is any of the likes of those persons of characters and possibly persons of interest, being of more than quite a few upon the increase for any given society or country or nation, representing the global community, being of the likes of the worst or the worst cis of unbelievers and unbelievers, being the deceivers who pretend to have become believers in God, as in Christians, aka Protestants. I said believers, not big beavers, as in JB, Justin Bieber's, and as these celebrities wish to become a god unto themselves, a self-appointed god, and to blaspheme the one and only God, like so many others, false gods, demigods, or false prophets, and or as they would be compared unto those being their ancient ancestors, as they would come off as modern day religious Pharisees and or Sadducees, supposed so-called holier than thou's, wolves in sheep's clothing, snakes in the grass, false brethren, being the likes of whom are of the worst or the worst cis of hypocrites, being of a religious nature, being as they are the religious church hypocrites, religious con artists, religious chameleons, religious charlatans, religious crooks, religious phonies, religious fakes, the likes of the worst cis, closet devil worshippers, being of whom make up the majority of most churchgoers of whatever religious denominations, and or as well as make up the worst cis, not just the worst, but the worst cis of hypocrites, being as they are. From the pools to the pulpits, the members and visitors alike. Anyway, though, getting back to that of my person, so I say, and whereas if at some given moment in time I myself could possibly offend anyone, then I would appreciate it if you bring it to that of my attentions, or to that of any persons being of whom that my person, the person of my same self, can or could possibly hire in the future if I become just ever so larger than life and could possibly expand my social media platform or podium with many different broadcasts for this one particular social media website address, being which I am an accountant. as I am an account holder of is what I meant to say. Prince of Peace continue to regulate my mind compared to how the Prince of Darkness attempts to confuse my speech. And as I think of it with that in my mind's attention to try to backtrack here with reason or purpose of being, in order I can go on to following to continue from where and when that my person at last left off so that I myself can or could possibly finish up as incomplete a former previous prior lines out in the same sense of word and without any further ado or interruption, be it coming from a proverbial neighbor from hell or public nuisance problem neighbor or anybody else for that matter, etc. And as I was trying to say in more words or less, to finish up, I thought, or as I tried to think to do so now with a mass intention. And anybody, or so I paraphrase and not quote exactly something I had mentioned earlier. If anybody or how many were to become or be affiliated, associated with, and representing any of my broadcasts for this particular social media website address domain, whereas if I were to become larger than life, a big time celebrity with all the fringe benefits to be affiliated or associated with and representing that being the same question of the former previous prior mentioned, and then could possibly hire others to assist me, or be they were to become business employees upon the company payroll or volunteers for this mine actually have it, that I would wish or hope to mushroom into something that could really have an impact upon not only our own American society, but whatsoever other societies, in due regard to foreign countries or nations, as well as for that of our own supposed so-called democratic republic or democracy of the USA. And whereas if anybody that could possibly become or be, if they're not already affiliated, associated with, and representing that being of any of my broadcast for this social media website address domain, being which I myself am an account holder of, or even if I myself were to possibly offend anybody and seemingly be, or even if I were to become or be in violation of any laws and or bylaws or infractions of this here or it, being as we have it, then I would appreciate it if you would bring it to that of my attentions and any others being of whom could possibly be affiliated, associated with me or representing that of my social media broadcast, first and foremost, before you were to take it upon yourself, as you would have the liberty to do so, to address the issues with the administrators of this here, to display that being a behavior conduct that you are willing to give me the benefit of the doubt, or any others affiliated associated with me representing that of my social media broadcast for this particular domain as we have it, a website address, and likewise is willing to give us the opportunity to make amends to whom it may or could possibly be due or owed, and whereas I will hope that issues will be resolved in favor of any area and all parties involved favorably. And that's including if I myself can or could possibly offend anybody with any particular language that I could employ the uses thereof, or namely that possibly express myself with any expedience of profanity or cuss words, to simply say, as that is not the reason why I have established that being of my own social media broadcast with this particular website address domain, to come off sounding in or seeming like quite a character that is likewise quite offensive, God forbid, for that would contradict the reason or purpose for my having taken the liberty to think of it with mass intentions to do so. But then hopefully nobody else would become quite an offense onto that being a person of I myself. Likewise, being because I have a zero tolerance level for any internet trolls and or intranet trolls for that matter, being of whom could possibly wish to use my own social media broadcast as a platform or podium for the likes to attempt to spread disinformation as well as discouragement and depression in a negative way. And I'm not with that program. And any internet trolls in the negative, being of whom I myself could possibly encounter within any of my social media broadcasts, I would immediately seek to take actions to not only silence one's chat, but then likewise, if the need persists, then to block one. And very few, then of whom I put on my block list, do I permit to regain entry or to reacquire access to any of my social media broadcasts, being because the majority of most, then of whom I put on my block list, then they themselves are blocked permanently. And hopefully you would be one of the few, then of whom I would unblock after having blocked. Okay, and now that I have gotten the preliminaries or the basic intro out the way, then okay, let's get the party jumping, or this here of the balls of conversation to rolling, to speak upon some or such of a subject matter of an issue at hand that could come to mind, or regardless of whether or not I would speak upon more than just one, like a couple, 3 or 4 more for that matter. Okay. I'm sorry about the present title to this social media broadcast in particular, being because, well, I have not as yet have had time available for me to, title it for something else, being because I was supposed to be doing, I still am doing, a 30-day challenge for maturity. You can put it like that. But something happened the last I was on here online, whereas my social media broadcast for that given moment time had been sabotaged. I don't know what had happened. I had explained and, putting it, that is the explanation in footnotes for anyone to read for that particular social media broadcast for the last one that was aired of mine. And whereas it was much longer than what you all would witness or notice, whereas it was like, I should have put it at least on average twice or 3 times longer than the time frame period. Whereas I had recorded as well as composed some as such for about, I would say for a time frame period of close to, if not exactly, an hour. And here it is, being because it was sabotaged, I had on record nothing more than about a quarter of an hour broadcast. Yes, like I had been hacked by a computer hacker of some kind, sort of type. And so I apologize for that, you all, for that momentary interruption of my last social media broadcast. It was something that was not up under my control. It was of unforeseen circumstances for whoever could have possibly become or had been the obnoxious party to have interrupted it. So as I apologize to you all then there, I'm apologizing to your persons now. And whereas if anything, whereas this present social media broadcast is supposed to be that of, as it is speaking upon the 30-day challenge, as I would have put it in the title, but I have yet to record the following days since the last time I had left off. Whereas if I do recollect or recall or remember correctly, then that my person, I'm supposed to be in the 4th or the 5th day of the 30-day challenge, but I will get to that in due time. But as of the present given moment in time, I'm speaking upon some of such other subject matter that has come to mind, whereas I was viewing a television news broadcast about some race of a female person, of a woman representing the opposite sex, yes, of a born and raised female, whereas police officers or cops in question, as you have noticed the title to this particular social media broadcast of mine, whereas they entered the wrong residence, whereas they had gotten that being of the addresses or the address locations where the suspect was supposed to be, confused, and they had entered into a woman's place of residence without a search warrant, and they had come in on her, and while she was in her birthday suit, butt naked, without a stitch of clothing on, she had to grab a blanket from somewhere, you know. Oh, wow. I mean, one can only imagine that of the nightmarish episode, being in which she herself had become subjected to experiencing, to be compared on to a proverbial neighbor from hell, a public nuisance, a problem neighbor for what or who I have for myself at the present, who goes all out of one's way to attempt to make my life a living damn hell with the many different extreme and excessive noises being in which he himself just continues to make upon a daily and nightly basis. And whereas I get to wondering as to whether or not he creeps just as much, or possibly worse yet, get to creeping that much more than how he would carry on otherwise, you know. And sometimes it could be just so practically, if not possibly, unbearable, you know. Whereas I have to get out of my pad, a place of residence, and go elsewhere to get a breather. It's just that chaotic or mayhem. But anyway, though, getting back to this one woman, and so the police officers, the cops in question, had entered her place of residence and scared the living daylights out of her, especially when they grabbed her in her birthday suit and arrested her, took her into custody. Whereas it took this one lesbian mayor of our fair city for the Midwest, well, this one present mayor of our city is a lesbian, you know. Notice I didn't say puss-eating bull dagger or dyke, you know, because that's inappropriate, you know. But as I was saying, this one lesbian of a mayor, she had to go on television to address the issue and make a public apology in behalf of this one woman whose place of residence was violated, with that being a civil and or criminal infraction, a violation offense against her person. And whereas that's why I had titled this particular social media broadcast. So I paraphrase and not quote exactly. Should the police be fined, or should they be jailed for their actions? And because that was a violation of that woman's civil and or human rights. You know, I mean, imagine somebody coming in on you unannounced. And this is like a great controversial subject matter that is being reviewed by more than quite a few or many different government agencies and civilian agencies or organizations, so far as this tactic that certain police officers or cops are continuing to use against not only American citizens but against foreigners, and whereas they're trying to legislate that of the same, to put it on the books after we would address it within that what they would call a committee or commission to try to ratify a bill into law to make that unlawful or legal entry into a person's place of residence without a search warrant. Well, it's supposed to already be on the books, but what I mean say they want to try to put more teeth into that law or by law and laws and bylaws affiliated associated with that of how a police officer or cop is not supposed to enter any American citizens or foreigners' place of residence, a foreign immigrant that wishes to become that of American citizen. You're not supposed to, if you're a member of the law enforcement community, as a police officer or detective, etc., or even the military, any members of the military, you cannot enter into an American citizens or foreigners' place of residence without a search warrant. And where this had happened most recently, and she was terrified. I say she was terrified. You know how you could be like really like freaking out over something. It could have you so worried, and you could, piss or pee or crap in your undergarments or your undies. That's how terrorized she was. Well, in her case, she being of the feminine gender, depending on what she could possibly decide to wear, be it a pants outfit or a dress or skirt, ensemble, wardrobe, apparel. Nevertheless, it was a kind of situation that would have, or an incident that would have anybody, practically, possibly ready to piss or pee or poo-poo or doodle or crap in their undies, to think you have police officers or cops, going about actions of a physical nature without a search warrant, making an unannounced visit, literally actually coming into your place of residence without being given permission or consent, knocking down your doors, slamming you up against the wall or on the floor, throwing handcuffs on you, ready to cart you off to the nearest police squad car or paddy wagon, then ready to cart you off likewise to the nearest holding cell. And it was pretty much so coming to that point before they had recognized and realized that they had the wrong place. Talk about having egg or dirt or mud on your face. I mean, I can only imagine how certain police officers and cops would feel quite humiliated or feel humbled or feel a sense of shame. Well, hopefully they did, then to think that was something that they had to do regardless of the consequences, serious consequences, or because we don't live in a police state. We don't live in a dictatorship. We're supposed to live within a democratic republic, a democracy. Though unfortunately that of our own, of the USA, the United States of America, has been sitting on its laurels, and has yet to. Don't get me wrong. I'm not teaching or preaching reparations payments. I mean, if our own U.S. or American government were to try to undo the social injustice of what blacks went through during slavery, or for our own United States of America, for our own continent, for that North America, or undo what Japanese Americans had to go through with those, what you call makeshift concentration camps or POW camps during a time frame period of chronicled human history for World War II, for that of the Western Hemisphere, that our own democratic republic or democracy is part of the territory thereof, representing a part of the global community, then I would think that our own Democratic Republic or democracy or the United States of America will go bankrupt, So that's not likely to happen, reparation payments. But I'm making reference to some such. Other than that, I think I'm just going to conclude on this last note of interest, and then hopefully I would chronicle that the following day for my 30-day challenge being up to date, or I just go on with the next day then. And I'm sorry if I've fallen behind in recording, but it was due to results of developments of unforeseen circumstances, as I had explained, and giving you all a reasonable explanation as to what had happened. It was beyond my control. Somebody had sabotaged my last social media broadcast, so that is exactly what happened. You can take it for what you want. It's not like I'm not trying to fulfill my responsibility or obligation to knock this 30-day challenge of broadcasting for this social media website address domain, as I have gone about committing myself to some such, believe it or not, because a person's word is supposed to be one's bond, If a person's word is not what it could add up to, then, that would make one out to be quite fraudulent, And I don't want to disappoint anybody. The only way that I could possibly do that, or supposedly insult somebody else's intelligence or disrespect my audience, or so I would have to be feeling quite up on the weather, or would have to have relapsed and gone back to living my life in the bottle or worse yet, the pipe, and so far I'm still in recovery. But anyway, though, on this last note of interest, so I'm going to conclude by saying, so I paraphrase it, not quote exact, as I would usually open up with basic intro as an introduction, then I would speak upon a subject matter, a couple of few, or more for that matter, depending on how that my person feel that something such a given moment time, and then I would, last but not least, bring things to conclusion to wrap things up by saying, so I paraphrase, if not quote exactly as I usually do, likewise, is what I was saying, by saying, if you haven't gotten Christ as your personal Lord and Savior, I will hope that you would think to do so now, while the blood is still running warm in your veins, by recognizing or realizing what he himself had done or did upon the cross of Calvary on the hill of Golgotha, suffering at the hands of some such Roman soldiers, upon the orders of their religious superiors, being the Pharisees and Sadducees. But then, nevertheless, whereas he himself had given his life upon the cross of Calvary to become that perfect sacrifice, the only sacrifice for you as well as for me. So that if any of us, being of whatsoever races, in whatever walks of life, factions of society, lifestyle preferences, being of the old and young alike, of both the two sexual genders, of males and females, representing not only
2020 is almost
the human species, but then nevertheless the global community for this post 911 era or new millennium, or this apocalyptic day and age. And whereas the doomsday clock is now at a couple of few minutes to midnight, compared on to how formerly, previously, or prior to then, it was at a quarter to midnight for these rather biblically prophetic times, were to possibly profess some of such faith in him, being the Lord of Lords, the King of Kings, the Prince of Peace, the Lord God Almighty, who had come in human form to save the lost immortal human souls, as we have for our own species. Whereas anybody were to profess faith in him, from there we become and be blessed in one regard or another, more ways one. First and foremost, with his salvation, being of which is the only means by which any of us can or could possibly become citizens of the kingdom of heaven and avoid the lake of fire, damn hell. And then second of all, we will be blessed with his deliverance. But first, we have got to get his salvation, being not just a much more important, but the most important blessing before you can be blessed in any regard. Otherwise, your final destination will be the lake of fire, damn hell, once you were to make that transition for the great beyond of the hereafter, the afterlife, and you will be assembled with the rest of the unsaved, unbelievers, and non-believers who have rejected so great a salvation to be terrorized and traumatized by the devil and the demons forever and ever, or be harassed, intimidated, persecuted, bullied by them. Whereas compared to we as believers in God, as a Christian, aka Protestant, will be across that great divide that separates heaven from hell in the company of other like-minded believers in God as Christians, aka Protestants, and in the presence of God and his angels otherwise. I ever said. You all take care and be safe, be blessed, not stressed. Peace and love, joy and happiness, and I'll get back with you all later. And I guess it's a wrap. Until then, bye.